as you're finishing, I also want you to think about what you felt was most powerful from yesterday's trip. How many of you guys did a reflection for your advisory class? Okay, I'm not gonna ask you guys to do another reflection, but I am gonna ask you guys to share. Daniel.
What about if you didn't like the bow ties?
Hold on, we're gonna talk about all that. Hold on. All right. Okay, so before we answer that question, what did you feel was the most powerful? I guess I can't really say what did you like the most from the museum, because I'm sure for many of you guys it was very sad. So how can you like something that's sad?
Yeah.
But what did you feel was, what do you think, is there something that you're always going to remember from the trip to the museum?
Yeah.
What?
Concentration.
Okay, but was there something in particular?
Yeah, like the entrance was like the barbed wires.
Okay, so the entrance into,
Plus the restroom, you know, like the women and children to work right now. The veil, the ones that could work over.
okay, so Edgar's talking about, if you guys remember, there's, when you're entering into the display of the concentration camp, and it looks kind of like barbed wire, it looks like you're entering the gates, and then it's got one tunnel for women and children, and one tunnel for able-bodied, I'm sorry, children and elderly, and the other one is for able-bodied people, okay? Yeah, that was pretty powerful, because most of you guys would have gone probably through the able-bodied people, and most of your brothers and sisters and your parents and your grandparents would have gone through the other tunnel, and you would have never seen them again. So yeah, I agree.
You don't count as kids?
I'm sorry?
You don't count as children?
No, anybody over the age of 14, from 14 to 45, you would probably have been put into the camp to work. Anybody under the age of 14, anybody who's older than 45 would have gone directly to the gas chambers.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I think me personally thinking about that and how I would have gone to one line and how maybe like my parents and my son would have gone to the other line, that was very powerful. I agree. Somebody else want to share?
Like how they gave us a little card for the kids.
The cards with the kids? How many of you guys, all of you guys should have gotten one, right?
Yeah.
How many of you had children who survived? Okay, a couple of you guys. Okay, a lot of the people who died were children. The majority of the people who died were children and older people. Okay. Yeah, I agree. It had their personal story, and then it had, you know, information on their life, and then at the end, you got a printout of what happened to them, right? Their complete story. What else?
How they would like throw the babies like over like more like the window, like
Yeah,
that was really sad.
yeah, I agree. That's the one where you guys sat inside the, where they showed kind of like the video on the screen, I'm sorry, on the wall. They were projecting the video on the wall and you sat on the concrete. Yeah, I agree. Does anybody remember what that story was?
Yeah.
About how the women who had just given birth were taken to one place and the children who were just born were thrown out the window into the trucks down below.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty sad. What else?
Who would have the guts to do that? Like,
Who would have the guts to do that? Well, part of it is the process of dehumanization, right? What does dehumanization mean? Austin?
Basically taking away someone's human rights.
Okay, that's part of it, definitely, taking away somebody's human rights. Nick?
making someone feel like they're inferior.
Okay, making somebody feel like it, and also making making that person less than human, right, in your mind. And how did Hitler accomplish this?
Keep on repeating it like they're not like
Repeating the same lie to make
Okay,
it
where
sound
did he repeat it?
Speeches.
Speeches, where else?
Propaganda.
Propaganda, right? Everywhere where the Germans went, they saw things about how Jews were subhuman.
The truth.
There were movies, propaganda movies that were shown in the theaters about how Jews were subhuman. I mean, comparing them to cockroaches and things like that.
rats.
So, rats, okay? So, this then becomes, oh, well, these Jews, you know, they're not human. Some people are able to more easily be involved in this because they feel, hey, these, they're not human. I'm not killing another human being. All right. Does anybody remember what they said about the resistance part? Did anybody remember hearing that?
They all
About the
died.
people who were hiding in the forest. Did anybody see that? Or did anybody hear that? Okay, so a lot of us have some misconceptions about the Jews. How many of you guys have ever asked yourselves, why didn't they fight? Why didn't they fight back? Nobody's ever questioned that?
Wasn't it because of like their beliefs in God or something like that?
Their beliefs in God? Okay, a lot of people have questioned that.
But also,
And
a lot of people didn't want to help them, like the U.S., huh? Like, they didn't wanna
Yeah,
help
that's-
them. Yeah, because they told that the U.S. and somebody else, I forgot, like they didn't want to help them out.
Okay,
Until,
well-
like, at the very end, like it was like starting to
Okay,
get worse.
here's part of the problem. The United States had been practicing isolationism. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
We talked about World War II, we talked about isolationism and how they didn't want to get involved in European affairs. So the United States didn't want to get sucked into a war. It wasn't until after Pearl Harbor that they become more directly involved in World War II. Before that, though, they had been involved in different ways. But for example, the Lend-Lease Act, right? But it wasn't until after Pearl Harbor that they become directly involved and actually send troops to Europe. Part of it was a lot of these people who were being put to death, where would they go? It's a little hard for countries to take in a massive amount of people, right? Because people need what?
Jobs.
Jobs. What else?
Homes.
Homes, food,
Water.
everything, right? Shelter. They need all kinds of stuff. And who's going to provide this for them? So a lot of countries didn't feel like it was their responsibility to take in people because they felt, this is going to this is a huge burden, right? So a lot of countries were no, we're not going to take any more people. We don't want any immigrants coming in from Europe. We don't want anybody coming in. It's going to put a burden on us, our economy, our people. Okay, that's part of it. Now, what I want to talk about is I want to talk about resistance in its different forms, because there is this myth, this stereotype that's perpetuated that people think that the Jews just willingly said, oh, my deportation papers are here, I'm going to get on this train, and they were they would be shipped to the gas chambers and they wouldn't say anything, they wouldn't do anything. That's not true. It's not your fault that you believe this myth, because this is what we see in a lot of movies, right? A lot of the movies that talk about World War II, that's what they show. They show all the people being deported. Okay, now, some of you guys have different perspectives of resistance, which is why I asked you that question. Have you ever resisted authority? And notice that there's a how and there's an explain. So let me get some people to answer that question. How many of you guys have resisted authority? Nayan? Who and how?
From who?
Who was the authority figure?
My dad.
Okay, your dad. And how?
Like, I don't feel like going to work, but like he go to work and everything. But one day I just didn't go to work and skipped work.
So what did you do? What's that called? When you don't follow somebody's orders?
Rebellion.
Disobedience.
Disobedience?
Revolting.
Rebellion.
A stand.
Okay. What else? Anybody else? Give me an example. Hold on before you start writing it. Actually, yeah, why don't you guys go ahead and do this bubble chart. So forms of resistance. So Nayan was disobedient.